car right there. He's got the 4 brand new tires. Got one in the fence back here.
Shane Van Gisbergen in the fence.
All right, so we are going to do our normal Shane Van Gisbergen race recap that we do for the Xfinity Series. But as you can tell, I'm not in my normal place and I'm not dressed normally. I am in the middle of a family event, but I had a little bit of gap of time to make this video. So we are going to do just that. But first, I actually wanted to give you an update on Shane Van Gisbergen's Cup Series weekend. He is going to be racing this weekend at the Charlotte Motor Speedway, the Coca-Cola 600. It's one of the majors, one of the crown jewel events for NASCAR in the Cup Series, and SVG will be participating. Now, this is his first ever start in a Cup Series car at a non-super speedway oval, so he qualified 36th, only 30 minutes of practice, and of course the qualifying lap. So tomorrow he's got 600 miles to learn, but what about the 300 miles today? Today at the BetMGM 300, which very funnily, is that a word? Funnily, whatever the proper word is, Caesar Sportsbook, rival to BetMGM, on their app, they actually did not put the name of the race. They did not put BetMGM 300. They put Xfinity Charlotte 300. I thought that was funny. Okay, I'm weird like that. Anyways, Shane Van Gisbergen, this is his second consecutive race with some sort of special paint scheme. Now, this is Memorial Day here in the U.S., a weekend, a Memorial Day on Monday, but the weekend for NASCAR to pay tribute to those who have fallen in service, whether it was, the World War II, Vietnam, World War I, whatever war it was. It's a day to remember, or in NASCAR's case, a weekend to remember those who have fallen. So Shane Van Gisbergen had a stealth bomber. I think it was a B-2 stealth bomber paint scheme tribute this weekend to honor those soldiers. So that was his look. That was the explanation of his paint scheme this weekend. But as for the race itself, let's talk about Charlotte Motor Speedway. I said earlier, SVG doing a 900-mile weekend where he is going to be racing in Cup tomorrow, 600 miles. Today, he completed all 300, so good start to the weekend. But what happened today? Oh boy, this is the one. What could have been, I feel like. I don't think a win was in the cards, but I think a top 10 was in the cards. We're going to break that down for you here. So first, Charlotte Motor Speedway. It's a 1.5-mile racetrack, which equates to 2.414 kilometers. It's the same shape as Texas Motor Speedway, the quad oval shape, but the big difference is turns 1 and 2. Turns 1 and 2 at Texas are 20 degrees of banking, whereas Charlotte, it's 24 degrees of banking. Both tracks have 24 degree of banking in turns 3 and 4. So Texas used to be basically identical to Charlotte, but ever since they lowered the banking in 1 and 2, it is now very different. But this is Shane Van Gisbergen's third 1.5-mile track that he's been to this season that is not a super speedway. So Las Vegas in the spring, Texas just about a month ago, and of course now Charlotte. This is his third 1.5 miles. So we're getting to that point in the season where, yes, he's going to be getting to new tracks like Charlotte, but there are tracks similar to Charlotte. So while he doesn't have exact experience at Charlotte itself, he has experience at 1.5-mile tracks, so he knows what to expect. Once again, not a great qualifying performance, but it's his first laps at the track. He's learning. 29th on qualifying. But that first stage, he fell back in the early laps, but he was able to get up to 24th. Then there was a caution with about 20 to go in the stage, and that kind of split the strategy a bit. SVG opted to pit, and a lot of guys pitted, actually, the majority of the field, but a handful of guys stayed out. But SVG, Bruce Schlicker, ultimately opted to pit at this break, and they came out in 26th. So, they were able to... once again, there was a guys that stayed out, so it's hard to gauge if he gained or lost, but technically it was a net loss. But by the end of stage 1, he was able to get up to 21st. At the start of the second stage, they made up a couple of spots on pit road, were able to get up to 17th, so restarted 17th, but fell back to 28th. I really don't know what happened there. I think well, actually, no, it was the next restart. I reread my notes. It's actually the next restart. We'll talk about that in a minute. But he ended up falling back up to 28th. And ultimately, there was another caution about the same time in the stage. So we got that same split decision. Do you stay out? Do you come in and pit? And the difference here, the big thing is that if you stay out, you save a set of tires. These tires, Charlotte is at that point in its lifetime that it has aged where it is very bumpy. It's a rough racetrack, and with what the time of day was during this race, it was a hot, slick racetrack. So the hot, slick racetrack plus it being very bumpy and kind of an older surface, these tires were being eaten. So just 5 laps, 10 laps could make a big difference. So if you could save that extra set of tires for later, it would be a big benefit. And we're going to talk about that and about why it ended up being a big impact on his day. So he opted to stay out this time. This time he stayed out, saved that extra set of tires. We saw a couple of other guys stay out with him. He restarted about 19th. But he ended up, I'm sorry, not 19th, 14th. And, he kind of got run over. Guys with fresher tires were right there behind him. He got put in a 4-wide situation, and he just said, you know what? We've only got 10 laps to go in the stage. I just got to stay on the lead lap. There's no point in wrecking, and backed out of it. So he opted not to wreck on that restart, if I had to guess. I don't know if he actually said that, but just they had the helicopter cam. I was watching him, and it was 4 wide, and you could see the 97 just slip back, whether he opted out, whether they just ran him over. But ultimately, end of stage 2, not the prettiest result, ends up finishing 23rd, but, he had old tires, and they were coming in for fresh tires. They had that extra set of tires, though. That is a big point here because this would come to play a factor later on. So then everyone pitted on this last pit, or at the beginning of stage 3, to come in, get fresh tires, and SVG, of course, pitted with everyone else, literally everyone in the field, because there were still over 100 laps to go in this race. There was still a lot of time, a lot of tires to be worn in a sense, so everyone needed tires at this point. But at this point, SVG and a few other guys have 2 sets of tires. Everyone else has 1 set of tires left after this pit stop. He restarted, I should specify, this race at the stage 3 beginning in P17, but he ended up falling back to 24th, was able to make up a couple more spots to 22nd, and a caution. And it got very cautiony at some point in this race. We're not there yet. But he ended up staying out. They did not want to put the extra tires that they had out at this point. They didn't want to burn them off yet. They were waiting for the right time to do it. And then we got a long green flag run after this, and we saw the green flag pit stops happen. But during this time, SVG was making up spots. 19th, 18th, 17th, 16th. He was up to 13th at one point. But for the majority of the run, he ran about 14th to 18th. Then with 57 to go, there was the green flag pit stop, the one and only of the day, I believe. So he had to make his green flag pit stop, as did everyone else. And then with 32 laps to go, this is where those extra set of tires come in handy. So everyone except for the 8, the 17, and the 97 have used up all their tires. So you're either going to put on scuff tires that have about 10 to 15 laps on them, or you're going to stay out. That's basically your options at this point, unless you are Chase Elliott, Sammy Smith, or Shane Van Gisbergen. Well, as expected, they came in and they got those fresh tires, and here's why it was such an impact. Shane ended up restarting P14. As I said, he was 13th when this caution came out, and he had those fresh tires. Chase Elliott had those fresh tires. Sammy Smith had those fresh tires, and this is a big advantage. We just talked about how it's an older, more worn out surface. It's a hot day. The racetrack is slick. These tires, even if it's a 10 to 15 lap difference, it is a huge, huge difference. And we saw it very quick. Chase Elliott, Sammy Smith, SVG all making up spots on the restart. The 97 about to rip the top of this racetrack to pass everyone. The 19 of Taylor Gray just washes up the racetrack a little bit, hits the 97 who gets into the wall. And after this, the chaos was happening in front of him, but Justin Allgaier, the leader, gets turned into the wall and a caution comes out. And this is where the day doesn't come unraveled, but the potential for a top 10 or a top 5, it's over at this point. Shane Van Gisbergen has damage to the right side of his car. They were able to fix it, pull the fenders out, but he had flat tires, meaning that he had to pit regardless. They had to put scuffs on it. And that great strategy call ended up going down the drain. And how do I know it's a great strategy call? Because the other 2 guys I just mentioned, Chase Elliott and Sammy Smith, they finished 1st and third in this race. Chase Elliott, your winner, his first Xfinity win since 2016, I believe. It's the second win for the Hendrick Motorsports number 17 car. Kyle Larson, of course, won at Coda. But Shane Van Gisbergen, this is the day that could have been. I think this was a top 10 potential day. Top 5, maybe a top 5, but top 10 for sure, I think was in the cards if he did not get put in the wall there. And once again, it's just hard racing. The 19 did nothing wrong, nothing intentional at least, but just washed up the track a little bit, hits the 97. The 97 gets into the wall, has those flat tires. He ultimately still finishes 15th, so a good result for him. That's back-to-back top 15s for him. Dover was a bit of a rough race. Martinsville, he learned a lot, had a decent finish there, but once again, Shane Van Gisbergen keeping it clean, another top 20 finish. That's just, but it's what he's been doing all season long at these ovals. But these are a huge couple of weeks for him coming up. He's currently 34 points below the playoff cutoff line. And that is where we're going to talk about this issue right here. And that is the next two races, Portland Raceway and Sonoma Raceway. These are two road courses. And if we look back at SVG's track record at road courses, we know what's about to happen. SVG is going to have a legit shot at the win the next two races. But the question is, do you go for stage points? They throw cautions at the end of stages now. And that's where it's difficult, because if you pit with 2 laps to go in the stage, you're going to have track position the entire race. You won't get caught up in any wrecks if they do happen. But this is where the struggle is. Do you go for the win? Do you go for the stage points? Because SVG is not out of this thing if it comes down to points. If he does not win at a road course or any race this year, he can still point his way in. And he can make up a lot of points these next two races and at the Chicago street race in about a month and a half. So that's where this kind of, what do you do? And personally, SVG can win at a road course. He's done it in the Cup Series, and he was 2.5 laps away from it at Coda. I think you go for the win, but once again, I'm not a crew chief. I don't know what I'm doing, but SVG's got a big couple of weeks. If he wins a race, he's in the playoffs. The points don't matter. If he doesn't, they're going to be in a tight point situation, but they've still got Chicago. So tough race weekend for SVG in terms of the what could have been. He could have gotten a top 10, I really do believe, but ultimately it's a 15th place finish. The contact with Taylor Gray ultimately just set them back too much. But thanks for watching this video. I hope you enjoyed once again. Sorry that it's not at a normal place. I'm at a family event, so thanks for watching. Sorry this is later than usual. Sorry it's not the normal setup, but I'll talk to you guys later, and I'll do all my videos tomorrow, this same place. We'll talk about the Monaco Grand Prix, the Indianapolis 500 if the weather cooperates, and the Coca-Cola 600.